Okay, now that that's done, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Essence Podcast, The Kitchen Table Talks, in which I, on second try at least, bring in people from out of the cold. Sometimes people I know, sometimes people I don't know, and I offer them a cup of tea. I have my cup of tea here, and unfortunately, Ashley's too far away to give it to her, so I'm going to drink it instead. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. So my guest today is Ashley Oppon. If you remember, for those of you who follow me, Ashley actually had me on Dine with the Divine podcast a couple of months ago. No, it was like 6 months ago now. It was in September that we.
September.
Yeah. So it was very, very, very warm when we recorded that, but it came out in September. So I needed to have her back on mine. I needed to have you come onto mine because you're amazing.
Ah, you too.
Honestly, you're amazing. But for those of you who don't know who Ashley is, and if you don't, it's very stupid of you, but Ashley is, here we go. So Ashley Oppon is a shamanic practitioner and founder of Sankofa Healing Sanctuary. For many years, she felt the call to dive into her spirituality in a powerful way. She always had a fascination with religion, mythology, and the mystical aspects of life. She started reading tarot in her teens and slowly made that into her first business, Dreadlock Tarot. This was her first introduction to using intuition and spiritual gifts to help others. And in 2015, she heeded the call to receive, she received from spirit to become a healer. So she then completed a 3-year apprenticeship to become a shamanic practitioner. Through her shamanic work, combined with her nursing career, she added deaf midwifery to her practice. After this, she rebranded and became Sankofa Healing Sanctuary. Her motto here is healing today for a better tomorrow. And this is why she uses the Akan symbol of Sankofa, which literally translates to return and get it. Her spiritual practice is one that is based on truth, clarity, and healing to get you back to a place of spiritual wellness. And you can find out more about her just below her name on the YouTube page here, and otherwise her website is in the show notes. So welcome, Ashley.
Thank you, Ben, for having me. I'm so excited to be
I
here.
am really excited. Honestly, I had such an amazing chat with you on your podcast. And it remains one of my favorites of all the ones I did, because I think you were like the second or third person who interviewed me after like I started putting myself out there. So I appreciate that.
Oh, good. I had so much fun. Oh my gosh. My mom also really likes the episode. She's like, "Oh, he's so nice."
Wait, I honestly afterwards I was like, I need jollof rice. I
I
really
know.
need jollof rice. I was like craving it, you know.
Oh gosh.
So Ashley, how are you?
I'm all right. I'm doing okay, you know. There was a lot of rain today in New Jersey, so there was a lot of flooding, but everybody seems safe, so we'll be all right, you know.
It's pretty intense for weather down there generally, isn't it? New Jersey, like between the north and the south.
Yeah, sometimes yeah, it can be. Like it rained from yesterday morning until this afternoon, and like there's a lot of places a little north of me, but that get really flooded. So
Mm-hmm.
it can be problematic, but my where I am, I'm okay. I'm kind of live on like a little bit of a hill, so we're
Okay.
all right. Yeah.
Everyone else can drown. You're okay.
I'm like, well, I'm good. So just kidding, everybody. Sorry.
No, I feel you. We my little village flooded years ago, like 25 years ago, I think it was. And downtown flooded, but it's one of those like little gully villages, and
Mm-hmm.
we were just up from there. And
Mm-hmm.
it's it's weird. It's weird. Flooding is such a weird thing because it creeps up on you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just like you sometimes you just think, okay, it's raining, and then all of a sudden you can't drive through like the center of your town, and you're like, oh, actually, it's way worse than I thought.
And yet there is always that one guy in shorts and a hoodie like trying to run through it,
Always. And then like I know years ago too, in my town we had one of the hurricanes, and the center of the town is next to a lake.
Mm.
So the lake flooded, and then of course somebody tried to drive through it and then got stuck in the car. Thank God it's like literally 100 feet from our fire station, so the firemen had to come get it. Was like a whole thing. It was, everyone was mad because they're like, now the firemen had to get involved, like you put them in danger. It was just, but everything's okay, and that person was fine. Their car wasn't, but that person was okay.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine. Yeah, I mean, a good thing that they were okay, but like, still, it is that idea. Like, you're putting other people in danger because you weren't listening, right?
Exactly. Just
Mm.
pay attention and also read the room or the weather.
Mhm.
Like, don't drive through a lake area, whatever. People are crazy.
It's so I was saying just before we started recording about my car situation. So for
Yeah.
people who are listening to this in February, back when we recorded this just before Christmas time, I had to go and get my car fixed. And
Mhm.
like, we're like, what, the 18th of December? Most people should have had their winter tires put on by now. And you go in and it's just covered. Like, I went in and their desk was just covered in car keys with people, we're trying to get their winter tires changed.
Yeah.
And like, we're pretty far north on a peninsula into the lakes. It's like, it gets really
Mm.
cold and icy up here, right? But again,
Canada.
in Canada. So actually, one of the things I really wanted to ask you to start today off. I mean, now we've done the whole like British colonial talk about weather thing.
Yeah.
I'm curious about your shamanic training, because I feel like a lot of people have gone through all sorts of shamanic journeys. A lot of people have done shamanic training over the years. And so I'm curious for you, kind of tell us about what brought you to shamanic training. Where did you do your training? What was that process like? Because 3 years is a very solid amount of time for an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it all started with a dream.
Oh, Shimon, I love it.
Yeah. So I never knew what like a quote unquote shaman was or anything like that in the general sense at all. So I had a dream where somebody and it was my, so okay, here's the thing. My grandmother, who I've never met, is like my strongest spiritual ally.
Mm,
She's come to me many times, and when I was young, she used to come to me. When I got older, she still comes to me. Um, so I had a dream about her, and she said this word in my dream, and I didn't know what it was, but I woke up and I was like, all right, let me see what this is, because she never steers me wrong. She's like, go look this up. So I did, and um, I learned about, I was just looking in shaman is a general word. It's
mhm,
a word from the Tungus people, and different Turkic people in South and North Asia. But so different places use this word, but it's generally a healer, right? Of in different areas of the world, depending on, everybody has their own different word. And I know in South Africa they use Sangoma and this and that.
mhm.
So I was looking up different cultures, like what people did, and I was like, you know what, this is what I see this, and I'm like, even if I don't go around healing people, there was something about it that I wanted to know more about. Also, years earlier, I had taken a class, and I don't know if they used the word shaman in the class, I can't remember, but we took a class where we did like journeys, and
Mhm.
we did all this, there was drumming, and it was very interesting, and I really enjoyed that class. But it was like an introductory kind of class, so it was great. But now going back, sorry, fast forward. So I was looking things up, and then I met a woman who lived kind of far from me, but I spoke to her and we kind of jived, and she explained to me um, how she did her shamanic training and who she did it with and their lineage, and they had studied with somebody in Peru. So I was like, okay. So she's like, why don't you come and see if this is for you, if you would enjoy this? And I said, okay, no problem. So then I went up there, I spoke to her, we sat, she did like a reading, and she's like, okay, this seems like it would be good for you. It seems like you're here for like, good intentions, and that this is something that you could do. And I said, okay, cool. So the first part of it was all learning about, it was all learning about like going inside yourself
Mm.
and kind of healing yourself and looking at, I always say this too. I found out so many things about myself that I didn't think were true. I found out I was very mad about a lot of things. I didn't think I was mad. I was like, me? Never. I was like, I'm happy. I'm happy go lucky. I'm not
I'm
angry about
happy.
anything. Yeah, exactly. I'm so happy.
That's
I'm
not a
not
twitch, that's trauma.
exactly. I didn't even, let me tell you, Ben, I didn't even know what that was. Like, I didn't know, like, I know I had trauma, but I was like, no, I have suppressed it so hard that I don't even care. it's it's not a factor in my life. So then when we started doing all this different work and I started working with different guides and doing different techniques and all these different things, all of this stuff started to come up. And I was like, ooh, I feel bad. I was like, this is no longer fun. This is actually very uncomfortable. So there was a lot of, so I then kind of had to, I took a break because I was like, I can't handle this. I can't keep learning about myself. And I always, the biggest thing I learned in the beginning of my shamanic kind of training was that I was a big part of my own like suffering. It's crazy.
It's a hard pill to swallow. I know, I've been there. It's a hard
Yeah,
pill to swallow, isn't it?
yeah, I was like, what do you mean? I don't like this. Like, but then I was like, damn, I've really been like a martyr
Mm.
for everything. And then I get mad that everyone's, I'm like, but I don't want to do this. Then why do I keep doing it? Like, it's crazy. And to really look at yourself and be like, and I always try to also explain because people say like trauma, everybody's trauma is different. I'm not, but like the part of it that sometimes it includes you and everyone's situation is different, but like is the part that again, I'm not a psychologist like you, but like I'm not a therapist, I mean.
No,
Yeah.
no, no, I am.
Yeah, exactly. You are. So like you can correct me anytime. But the thing that I've learned, at least for myself, is that like it's not that I caused these things to happen to me, but it's that the way that I ended up handling it didn't make it any better.
Yeah.
You know, like being angry or just being like, well, everybody hates me. Like,
Because that's easier to hold on to than the
yes,
actual truth, right?
exactly. It's so much easier to just do nothing and just be like, well, the world hates me and God hates me and everything goes wrong in my life. It was so much easier for me to then be like, you know what, though? I could actually have conversations with these people, possibly. I could learn to either let go of this or forgive this person if that's what's possible for me. Like,
Mhm.
I didn't want to do all that. It's hard, you know? Too much emotional bandwidth. I don't have it. But once I started kind of that process, and for me, it ended up being a lot of forgiving people and real and meeting people where they were at and
Mm.
realizing like, you know what, everybody, and I can say this, it's fine.
Do
Like
it. Do it. Let's do it.
yeah, let's get into my trauma. Like realizing that like one thing, and I'm like such an advocate for it now, is like people always blame their parents for everything. And don't get me wrong, parents do things wrong all the time and parents mess us up. But also I had to really swallow a pill and be like, my parents are people too. Like, and they also went through, my parents, everybody has a story. My parents have stories, you know what I mean? Like everybody does. They have stories of their own trauma. And
Yes.
I'm like, wow, maybe they don't hate me or anything. Maybe they just didn't know how to handle stuff. And I know, like, at least in my case, my parents are good people. They're both good people. Like, and they mean well, but they just didn't know how to deal with certain things. And then they piled that on, AKA generational trauma. Like, and then,
Mm.
and I got to have these really great conversations with my mother and my father. And then I hear stories from them and I'm like, damn, what happened?
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
What
yeah,
did
yeah,
grandpa say to you? What did grandma do? Like, and you realize like, okay, they didn't always mean it like to do what they did, but that's the way they were brought up, or that's the way they knew how to handle it. And for them too, I remember my dad being like, I never told anybody this. And
Oh.
he's and even him having a recognition of like, wow, maybe this is bad for me. I was like, yeah, dad, that's terrible. He's like, wow, thank, and he even said to me, he's like, I never told anybody that this had happened to me, but thanks for like acknowledging that, like, that wasn't my fault. I was like, yeah, you were 7. Like, nobody should have done that. And he's like, oh, okay, that's good.
So, question, let me just jump in here because you said a few moments ago really something really important, that forgiveness was part of it. Now, that word, in my experience, is where people often get held up. Can you
Yeah.
talk about what forgiveness meant to you in this? How does it look?
Yes.
What does it look like, and what does it mean to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, oh, thank you for bringing that because that's so important. Yes.
Therapy hat on, go on.
Yeah. I know. Free session. I owe you. So to me, because like so atrocious things can happen, and it doesn't mean it was okay. Like none of that was okay. This was bad. I know it was wrong. And whether or not the other person wants to acknowledge it, it's like at a point it ends up not mattering. Like, but for me, forgiveness meant like looking at the situation and being like, okay, what is my, okay, this sounds stupid, but like, what is the problem here? Like, this, what happened? And then it's like, am I blaming myself for this? Um, and a lot of the time that was part of it, is like I blame myself, or I didn't understand why this other person couldn't do better. You know what I mean? And for me, I, in some situations in my life, the other person is never gonna do better and they're never gonna be different. And I have to accept that I am not responsible for that person and how they are. Like,
Right.
so that's forgiving myself in that situation. I'm like, I can't hold on to this because this is gonna kill me. It's gonna eat me up. And this other person's just gonna live their life. So I need to recognize within myself, like, okay, I need to start the process of letting go because this thing has a power over me. Like that's that's not fair. Like I can't move forward because of this issue. So whatever I had to do, if it's like spiritual stuff, if I had to speak to somebody, whatever I could do, it was like my process just, looks different than everybody else's, but you figure out how I can start to let this go because I can't let my past control me, you know, like, and take, and then the times when I was lucky enough to at least have conversations and be like, look, this thing wasn't cool. Like if the other person doesn't understand that, I have to know that, like, at least I spoke and I said what I need. I spoke my truth. I said what I need to say. And then I have to walk away and be like, that I have to leave this here. I said it and I have to leave this situation here.
Mhm.
And then sometimes I'm lucky enough to get a like, I'm sorry I didn't know that hurt you, or I'm sorry that I didn't know how that affected you. And that's great, like, and I feel that people always look for that forgiveness or think that's the only type, but it's not. Like, there's a lot of times you just have to forgive yourself and you have to just you just, and it's a lot easier. I don't mean to make it sound flippant or anything, like, but you have to find sometimes a way to just reconcile things and realize that you can't let your past have power over your decisions going forward, because like I think if we all think about all the crappy things that happen to us all day, we will all just stay in bed, like, and nothing would ever get done.
Well, that's the thing. It's that it becomes a narrative, right? It's the lens that then you see the rest of the world through, right? And I apologize for
Yeah.
those listeners. There is a dog in the background barking, so if anybody could hear that, I apologize. I think that so with that piece around kind of forgiving yourself and giving yourself grace, it sounds like, and
Mm-hmm.
also just removing those expectations from others. Can you talk
Yeah.
then from like a shamanic point of view, like from your practitioner point of view? How does that look on a spiritual level? How do you experience that when you're working with somebody, or even when you were working with yourself? Like, what does that look like, that process on an energetic level?
Yeah. Okay. So so it's interesting because a lot of the time when people need healing services, it has to do with trauma, right? So I always tell people the first thing I'm like, it's because a lot of it can be really, really heavy. I'm like, first things first, have you spoken to a professional about this? Like, have you gotten, what you need? Or are you currently getting what you need? Because if you're seeing a therapist now, that's cool, but just make sure that this isn't the only supplement, because I'm not here to mess you up more. Like, I'm not here to improperly handle your trauma. So most people are already seeing a therapist, or they're like, yeah, I saw a therapist. I wanted, this to kind of supplement it. Cool. That's great. So the first thing is, most basically, is we have to talk about it. And that's the hardest part for everybody, because a lot of times when lay people, I'll call them, or muggles, um, when the muggles come to people like us who are kind of like more spiritual people, they're like, oh, I'm going to sit there, they're going to drum, they're going to rattle, they're going to sing, and then like, I'll be fine. And I'm like, oh, no, 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 honey. No, 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 no. I know, like, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that you did not know. But we are gonna sit here and we're gonna talk about our feelings a lot. There will be some drumming, there may be some rattling, but we're gonna talk a lot about our feelings, and and I explained to them that, like, in different situations and depending on what's going on with them, you can create energy around you. You can, and again, a narrative. We can create a narrative that builds and builds and builds, and that energy ends up kind of sticking with us,
Mm.
and that can cause lots of issues in your life. So say people have like, oh, well, everything negative happens to me. And you can go as basic as like, the power of thought is true, right? Yeah, when you think something, when you think every day is just going to be terrible, every day is terrible, because even when something good happens, you only think of like the bad part of it, just like you were talking about your car. You could have been like, oh, my car, and it broke down, it was the worst thing ever, but you were like, well, this happened to my car, but the good part about it was X, Y, and Z. So it's like, it starts there, and a lot of people don't even realize, like, oh, I have to change the way I speak. And I find, spiritual practitioners, magical practitioners, we've gotten very good at that. We know that, like,
Hopefully.
talking, yeah, hopefully. Sometimes we don't, and that's a problem for me. But
I include that myself. Yes, yes, yes.
yeah, but like, we realize that, like, speech and like how you speak matters. So it goes like into so many different things. Like, if somebody comes to me and they're like, I have this big problem, and I'll give an example. I used to see a woman who had issues in her home, and she was telling me, oh, there's these entities in my house, and I'm convinced that there are these entities. And I'm like, okay. But before, I was like, okay, she's like, I need my house cleared. I need my house cleared. Cool, cool, cool. Then come to find out, when we start talking before the house clearing, she's like, oh yeah, and my brother died by suicide, my mother died by suicide, and I'm a former drug addict, and this happened and that happened, and I had a miscarriage. I'm like, okay, so we have a lot going on. Now, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm not saying there's not some entity in your house, but I am saying that you are surrounded by all this energy. And I was like, have you ever spoken to anybody else about this? And she's like, no. And I was like, she's like, I'm fine. I was like, ooh, my friend, I'm not sure. You may want to talk to somebody about that too. And because it sounds like you have a lot of trauma that you hadn't processed. And maybe to other people would think, what? But to her, she like literally had never heard that. She's like, nobody ever told me maybe I should talk to somebody. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, yeah, and it's not, and people still, which is amazing to me, have this idea that, like, if you tell them they should talk to somebody, you're saying they're crazy, quote unquote crazy.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big,
No,
big issue.
yeah, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, it just means that something happened to you, and maybe you need somebody to chat about it with. And if, some people, it's okay to chat with their friend. Some people need a little deeper. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I feel like when it comes to, and forgiveness, when we're doing like kind of work with people with trauma, is kind of like the last leg of it, because we have to talk through it, we have to process it, and then at the end we have to let it go. And one thing that I found too with myself, and I see with clients,
Mhm.
which is crazy, when I think about it, I'm sorry, I know I use the word crazy a lot. I'm not calling anybody crazy. Like, but one thing I've learned when you think about it is like, I realized when I was starting to kind of forgive people and heal more, I was like, I was afraid to let go because I didn't know who I was without this like anger.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
weird. Yeah, I was like,
It's absolutely true though. Like
yeah,
I felt the same way with some of the things that I let go too. It's that it becomes comfortable. You become comfortable with that anger, right?
yes,
Mm.
yes. And you're like, am I gonna be all right? Like, if I'm not this person anymore, like, how am I gonna react? And you also, like, in my case at least, I realized, like, oh, I have to, like, tear a lot of these walls down and, like, accept people and, like, be different and I have more of a responsibility to be better. I can't blame everything on my past anymore.
Mhm.
Now it's like, I just have to be, like, an okay person. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, so, like, so when I find that a lot of people have that issue too, and they don't really realize it. They may say it in different ways, but they realize like, but I've always been like this. So if I'm different, who am I without this pain? You know? And of course people want to let it go, but like you said, you become so comfortable and it becomes part of your life that you think, I don't know who I am outside of this.
Mhm.
And then it becomes, hopefully, and most of the time people realize like, wait, I can be a whole person. I can be whoever I want.
You can be whoever you want. Exactly. I found the same when I stepped out of my anger. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah, you're like, I can be anybody. And you realize that like the anger is actually more of a prison than you think it is. Like
Mhm.
when you're stuck there, you can't move forward. You can't find out who you really are because you're just like, nope, I have to live like this. And then when you have to live like this, you're like, "Oh, I could do whatever. I can be whoever, and I'm not. Everything isn't dictated by who people told me to be or like what happened to me, which is
Right.
really, yeah, which is really neat.
So I have a question on that
Yeah.
because I think I suspect it will relate.
Hmm.
A lot of your work is you moved into deaf midwifery,
Yeah.
being a deaf doula, right?
Hmm.
I don't know how to ask this without leading you, so I'm just going to lead you.
That's
Is
fine.
is it a similar sort of process when you're assisting somebody over and crossing
Mhm.
over?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. There's a lot that goes
Mm,
with that. Yeah,
mm.
because man, like death is weird. And like it's like, and
Really
it's a
weird,
big,
yeah.
it's real weird because it's a big realization, that we're like that it's gonna end and that there isn't, my dad's favorite quote is there's always tomorrow. But then when you realize that there may not be one, like
Mhm,
people have to reckon with a lot of different things. So, one thing a lot of death doulas do, and that I like to do, is people do different like legacy projects. So they, whether it's working with a photo album, there's a million different ways to do it. Writing letters to people, um, but I find like especially like writing letters to people, and as a therapist, I'm sure you know all about this. But
mhm.
people write, people
My
love to write
favorite thing
letters,
to
like
write to people.
yeah, writing letters to people that maybe you don't send or whatever you want to do with them, but um it's so powerful, you know, and to say everything you need to say and to find, to just people want to leave knowing that they've said everything they wanted to say. And forgiveness is a big, big deal when it comes to
Mm, mhm,
death. People want to forgive, or they want to know that somebody forgives them, and that's a big theme with a lot of people. They want to move through that before they pass.
mm,
And death midwifery work too. Yeah, it's all about healing and not being death is scary, but you don't want people to go into it being so scared. Like,
Sense.
just understanding that if it's okay for them, if they want to understand that, but like understanding that this is kind of just a transition, it's just another, and it does help in my opinion
Mm,
when people have some type of spiritual or religious belief. If
mm,
they don't, that's fine, but like it's easier to explain to them and it's easier for people to accept a little bit, I find sometimes. Um, if people say, well, there's nothing, I'm just going to the ground, that's fine, that's totally fine. But I do find that it's easier for them, people who have some type of belief, to want to start that forgiveness process and do
yes.
this and that. Yeah, because they think, well, my creator or whatnot would be happy with this, and this is what I should do. But yeah, I hope it answered your question.
Oh no, it does. It does. It just is generating more questions because I'm really curious about that piece with somebody who doesn't have like spiritual or religious belief. I know
Mhm,
in some of my own circles, I one of my really good friends is working heavily in hospice work, and she's
mhm,
a doula, and she's worked with at least I believe two individuals over a prolonged chronic illness, um,
mhm.
and they came back to spiritual belief. But
Yeah.
can you talk? I know confidentiality, of course, we don't want you to break confidentiality, but can you talk about some of those experiences working with people who didn't have religious belief and like where did they end up, if I may ask? Not like
Yeah.
end up in the ground, but like where as they approach to that inevitability.
So, funnily enough, the few people I know, and I even know this from my like regular job, or
Nursing.
people, yeah, people like to, like when people get close to death, that is that, what is that quote? Like an atheist in a foxhole or whatever they say. Like, yeah, people do start to be like, they ask me. That's always starts out like, what do you think? And I'm like, well, like I always kind of bounce it back to them. I'm like, what do you think? And they'll be like, well, I always thought there was nothing. And I'm like, okay, I mean, that would make sense as a point. Like most people haven't seen it. So, but they ask me, and I'm like, well, to be able to, and I just give people my honest opinion. I always say that, look, I don't go into like all my like magical thinking, but I usually say, for me, I believe there's too much stuff going on here for this to be it. Because if this is it, that sucks. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah, I agree.
yeah, like if you had to wake up every day and go to work and like make money and go through difficult times, and then you're just gonna tell me I'm gonna go to the ground, like that's boring. I'm like, look, I think to me, there's too much going on for me to say that there's nothing on the other side. And I think that if anything, if there is nothing, the best thing about it is that people who are in, like, hospice or people in pain, there will be no more pain. So, if anything, if there's nothing, that's fine. Then people
Mm,
just will go and be at peace. And a lot of people, at least in my experience again, they start to always question at the end. At least people I know who are like atheists or agnostic, they'll be like, I don't know, I'm starting to feel
mm,
like, and I'm like, okay, like, and again, whatever you feel, whatever is gonna make you feel at peace is what you should feel and what
mm,
you should think. But yeah, a lot of people start, and especially I've had a couple people who see, and when I used to be a hospice nurse too, um, they start seeing people.
of
That's
course.
very
Yeah.
common. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm, yeah.
So they'll be like, I had a patient years ago who was an atheist, but then he was very funny too. I loved him. He was like, I came to his house one day to just check on him. I'm like, how you doing? He's like, I don't know what's going on. I think I'm hallucinating. I was like, he's like, I don't know. I was taking morphine, but maybe I should stop because I'm pretty sure I'm like, no, what happened? So he starts telling me about his dead wife.
Mm,
I woke up and my wife was at the end of the bed and she was touching my leg. And he was like, but you're dead. And she's like, I know. And I woke up. And I was like, okay. And it happened when he got closer again.
mm,
And he was like, I don't know. And this time I remember him telling me, she was kind of like telling him, like, don't worry, it's gonna be fine. You're gonna come with me. And he told me, like, well, even if there is nothing, it sounds like she's wherever. So
Ah,
maybe there is, yeah, he's like, maybe there is something because it sounds like my wife is there. And he's like, that makes me way less scared because I know I'm gonna see her. So it's fine. And I
mm,
was like, okay. So he was like kind of started to question it. But it was, yeah, he's like, I think my wife is wherever this place that I don't really believe in, but I guess she's there, so it's cool. It's interesting. Yeah.
I'm really struck by that because it's such a widespread phenomena that it
Hmm.
can't be just discounted as being, particular disease affecting the mind, right? And it's cross-culturally, visitation is a thing all over the world.
Yes.
Mm,
It's fascinating. Like
mm,
just when I've heard so many stories of people visiting, coming through, like pulling people's legs, making
mhm,
jokes, like all sorts of stories. And yeah, I'm like, I just think, yeah, it cannot just be everybody's brains are just like
mhm.
collapsing. Like something has to be happening, at least,
Oh,
Yeah. And I think when a person is that close to crossing over or transitioning, where I think that's when, like, talk about veils being thin.
mhm,
I think that's when the veil's super thin. Like, because yeah, right, that moment this person's life is gonna end, like, and they're entering this other space. I think all sorts of people are looking like,
mm, mm,
hey,
mm,
yeah, like, and people don't want to be most people who have, well, everybody has somebody on the other side. They don't want them to be afraid, to come and find their way. And in some circles, people believe, oh, um, there's a certain window
mm,
someone has to get there, or else they become like a wandering spirit. I've heard
mm,
this before, like different people believe that. So I think also those people are there to help them over, like, oh, make sure you go left instead of right, like so you don't get
mhm.
lost,
Yep. Drag them kicking and screaming into the afterlife, right?
Yeah,
Right.
there's
Some,
no like Google Maps, so they're like, you gotta come with me. Yeah.
hmm. I'm trying to decide if I want to ask you this, mainly because it's such a personal question. So
Yeah.
feel free to say no if you don't want to answer this, but um, I think it's something that you probably get asked a lot anyways.
Mhm.
Have you ever had the privilege of like being like is part of your service and part of your privilege being with someone as they pass? And what was that like for you the first time?
Yeah. So, I've been with somebody when they pass, and it is, it's like being in a room and like the air getting sucked out of the room for a minute.
Mm,
You can feel the life leave, like the soul is, you can feel it, and it feels very strange. But like, I knew, like, the first time I that happened to me, I knew I was in, and to me, I was like in the presence of something. Like I felt it, like something has happened. Like like it was very strange. And but also, I mean, for me personally, it was very comforting
mm,
that this, because the person I remember was not, like, it wasn't a gentle life, and it wasn't a gentle goodbye that this person was having. They were in pain, they were really suffering,
mm,
and at the last moments they were unconscious, but it was because we were giving them lots of pain medicine at
right,
that point.
right.
So when I felt that leave, yeah, I felt their whole body almost relax. And then I felt just like around me that this person had like left. And it was really, it's weird. It sounds funny and not funny, but it's an honor to like witness that, and to be in the presence of that. And quietly to myself, I thank my spirits, like, and my people for letting me be part of this process with this person. And I just pray to them that this person is safe on their journey. Um But it's quite an experience. It's quite an experience. Yeah. It's interesting.
Every time I've asked that of somebody who I knew or suspected had that
Mhm.
experience, they say something very similar.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah. I've only ever experienced a pet passing.
Mhm.
But it was I mean, those moments, I think anything passing, anyone passing.
And pets are huge, though. Pets
Pets
are
are
part of your
huge.
family,
They are
you know?
absolutely. Yeah.
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 And
It is amazing. Like well, my last pet passed away 2 years ago, and I had to be the
mm,
one to sit with her when they injected the needle. And it was one of those situations, like it's almost like the whole universe just shows up to just watch. That's how it felt. Like I remember being very hyper aware of many eyes just on this moment,
yes.
you know.
Yeah.
And I've heard other people say something similar, but it kind of is like the macro of the microcosm comes down to the micro, of the macrocosm comes down to the micro. The big becomes the small, right?
It really does. And it's interesting because it's like almost, so I've also seen people give birth, and
Wow.
it's, yeah, and it's also like that, except the opposite.
Mhm.
And you just feel the fullness
Mm.
when like a baby, like, and there's a reason I don't do labor and delivery nursing. I think it's gross. That's just me. I
Actually
was like,
bringing the truth.
yeah, I know. Yeah. I was like, ooh, no, oh God. Like, what? But when a baby is born, it's like, and you hear them cry, it's like you feel full. So it's like so interesting, because you're like, oh my. And I remember the first time I was in school, but actually the first time I saw my sister being born, but I don't remember it that well. But when I was older, I was in school and I remember just starting to cry because I was just like, God, wow, good job. Like, I was like, that was so cool. But I felt like you feel like all everything around you, and then you just feel full of life, and it's just amazing, like, to see. And then like the after part is again gross, but that part is very, very cool, and to see like life come in, and you start, it's almost like, to me, seeing like the opposite. People see their life flash before their eyes when they're passing, and when you see a baby, you see all the possibilities for this
Mm.
person. You're like, this person could be anybody and anything, and they're just there, and this is very neat. Like,
Yeah.
so, yeah. Like,
Such a little bundle too. Yeah.
yeah, they're just like this small person, and you're like, wow, this person's gonna live a whole life.
Yeah.
And like, this is just this cycle that just keeps happening. And you're like, wow, it's just for billions of years. We just keep doing this.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess so.
It's interesting because trying to explain that to spirits, especially spirits who've never incarnated, they don't get it. It's so interesting when you meet a spirit, and I know you have experience with this,
Mhm.
meeting a spirit that has never incarnated, because there is a total ambivalence with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's
Mhm.
I love, and I don't know about other people's like spirits that they speak to, but my spirits, they don't understand my problems and why it's a problem. They'll be like, so what is the issue you're upset about? What? Why? Just don't do that. And I'm like, no, but I have to do. And they're like, stop. They're like, humans. Oh my gosh, you guys.
It's like
Yeah,
dealing with somebody with a trust fund and having to explain going to shift work, right?
exactly. And especially when I'm trying to explain like time, they never get
Mm.
what, and I'm like, how long is this gonna take? And they're like, why are you worried about how long it's gonna take? I'm like, because I don't I can't. They're like, it's gonna take as long as it takes because we don't have time. We don't know what you're so worried about. We're infinite. I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm not infinite, but okay, I'll do whatever you want. Oh,
It's
It's
like
so
the was the prophets on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Why are you here? What do you want?
exactly. I know those spirit, and I know whenever I talk like and I have these conversations with them, and all your spirits who are loving you and they're like loving on you, but at the same time, at least for me, my spirits are also very like, not, I'm not gonna say demanding. They're not demanding, but they are a little bit. When I haven't done, they're like, you haven't done what we asked, so I don't know where you're back. They're like, you need to do this first, and we already told you. So when you're done, we'll talk to you later. Like, bye. We don't know why you're still talking to us. You haven't done what we I'm like, okay, 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 okay. Oh, that's so funny. And I don't know if I feel like it has to be like this. I feel like my spirits from my own cultures relate to me the way that my people from those cultures are. So like all my West African spirits are very jokey, but they're also very abrasive, and like they're not trying to be. That's just the way they talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah. But so they're not like soft and sweet and cuddly. They're more like very abrasive. And then I have some spirits that are more um like European, and they're a little bit more stoic, and they just speak to me very plainly. So yeah, I think it's like a cultural thing, you know? I don't know.
I hear you in that. No, I
Yeah.
hear you in that. There's like a, especially with the ancestral pieces. I know you work a lot with ancestral piece. There's that co-creative kind of component to culture, right? The
Yeah.
spirits are involved in the creation of the culture and perpetuation of it. And a lot of people from like a mixed background can often get confused with that.
Mhm.
Even with my white background, there's Welsh,
Mhm.
English, all of that, right? And
Yeah.
English people, like English spirits, they tend to be very weird when it comes to territory, obviously, because
Mhm.
1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, the original Saxon homeland was destroyed, right? But I
Yeah.
have noticed that it's an interesting thing. Yeah, it's an interesting thing.
Yes. I
Yeah.
know.
How do you navigate between all those demanding spirits then for you?
Yeah. So I just I find that like I just kind of I try to meet the okay, so when it comes to my like ancestral kind of spirits, I I try to mm, try to meet I try to deal with them one at a time. Like first of all, I really can't mix them up like that. Like, I have to like talk to these guys today and talk to these guys tomorrow because like they're very different energies. Like I have a lot of West African spirits, and then I have some of these like uh what British Isle spirits too.
Mhm.
This is part of my heritage. So I have these people, but again, I can't really talk to them in the same, and the way they react and the way they speak is totally different. So my West African people are very, like I said, very demanding, or very, but they also make a lot of jokes. They kind of speak in proverbs, they speak in rhyme, they speak, so I have to like do a lot of figuring it out, and they don't really help me out. They just wait for me to figure out, and they're proud of me, but they won't give me any clues. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
yeah, they're like, figure this out, and they'll tell me some proverb. I'll be like, I don't know what that means. I'm like, that's fine, bye. But my kind of my more Caucasian spirits that I talk to sometimes, they speak way more plainly. They're more they're more gentle with me, I find.
Mm.
Yeah, a little bit. Um and I just kind of just yeah, I just separate them, and I talk to them when I need to talk to them, and they come through when they need to come through, and
Mm.
it's pretty
That's
good.
right. I'm trying to remember from our conversation.
Mhm.
It's your great grandmother. She's from Scotland, right?
No, my so actually my great now it's my it would be my great great grandfather was Irish.
Ah, okay,
Um,
okay, okay.
yeah, and my
Mm.
great grandfather used to call him Whitey because he had red hair. but he was half black. But so yeah, like I always connected very deeply with that.
Mhm.
And I didn't even know that much about it, but and I'm not like obviously my great great grandfather, so I'm not like my percentage is not that high, but I always connected. Yeah, yeah, but I always
Sorry, Ashley.
connected with. Yo, no, that's true. Yeah, screw that. I always connected really deeply with like the mythology and just like the way of the land. And then my mom grew up in England,
Mhm.
and I love the UK. Like I just like it there. I think it's great. And I always kind of connected there. When I go there, I feel very like, oh, this is great. Like I'm here. This is like, but yeah, and then I have it's funny too. I have these so my grandfather went from Jamaica to the UK, and I've been to Jamaica too, and my kind of Jamaican spirits, it's interesting because they were, this is a slave colony, and I feel all their trauma. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's very like ingrained in them. They're like working, they're hard working, like things are difficult, and I feel that. I feel their joy too. They had, and they expressed to me they had a lot of joy. It wasn't all bad for them every
Mhm.
day. But they had a lot of struggles, and life, wasn't easy. So it's interesting to feel all that trauma. It's interesting to physically see it.
Yeah.
Like once I kind of, you know, learn more about ancestral healing and trauma and stuff, that I see how it played out in my own family.
Yeah.
Um, and then being the one to be like, we have to handle this is like, this is annoying, but okay, this is what we're doing. Like, but it's interesting to see it and to be able to kind of talk to it and kind of almost counsel these spirits.
Mhm.
And also, we are, I know this is like so cliche, we're the dream of our ancestors, right?
It's true. And that is very
Yeah.
cliche, but it's true.
Yeah, exactly. Like so I see my ancestors kind of looking at me, and I think to myself, oh, I haven't accomplished everything I want to accomplish. But them looking at me being like, you got way farther than we could. Like, good job.
Guys, right?
Yeah. And wanting to make them, proud of me, that I'm living up to what they hope that somebody in their family line could live up to. So I'm sorry if I'm babbling too much.
No, you're not babbling at all. No, this is really conversational. No, it's all good. And no, I'm struck by that piece because again, I mean, coming from ancestral healing background myself too, it
Mhm.
is it's almost like that forgiving yourself piece, right? Right?
Yeah.
Stepping into possibility, but knowing that that possibility is linked back to the dreams and the possibilities of our ancestors, right? And it
Yeah.
strikes like it really strikes me that so like it makes sense to me that your backgrounds would collide in you
Mhm.
because their experiences were very similar, right?
Yeah.
Jamaica, Ireland, very similar colonial experience, very similar kind of that awkward relationship with colonial powers and slavery,
Yeah.
especially in all those pieces. So absolutely, I can see that. So this is the question that I have for you. I'm sorry,
Mhm.
we're turning this into a full-on therapy interview.
Let's do it.
So how do you then relate to that legacy piece, but also stepping into your own legacy piece?
Mhm.
If that makes sense.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. So part of it is, and for me, part of it is learning about them and learning the life that they lived so that I can kind of understand them a little bit better. That's and part of it is that I just really like history. So that helps, like
That
so
definitely helps, yeah.
yeah, it helps a lot, but like learning more about like what it was like for the people in Jamaica to live at this time, what it was like for Irish people who were, deported basically from their own land to be living in the Caribbean islands, what it was like for them. And learning about different groups in Jamaica, like the Maroons, who kind of all got together and were like, oh, F this shit. Like, they all just like ran away. But like part of that legacy, learning about them and almost telling their stories kind of is part of my legacy too. Like I'm able to tell people's story, and that kind of ends up being kind of how I even like started my podcast, because I'm like,
Mm.
not only for me, but there's so many stories,
Ah,
and there's so many people beyond just my own culture, and their stories need to get told, and we need to remember them. And I always think of, like, like Coco, like, like,
always comes back to Coco. Whoever I speak to, it always comes
everything.
back to Coco.
Yeah. Everything comes back to Coco. It's like, you don't want to forget how people lived and what they went through, even like rituals and customs and types of things, because you learn so much about these people. And when we get to learn all these different things about these people and do things, like working with ancestors, like all the things you talk about, you get to know so much about yourself and why things are happening the way they're happening, and patterns, and like it explains so much. And then on top of that, like in the other part of your question, like that helps you form your own legacy from that, because you're like, okay, these are the things that were really cool about my family or about who I am, and these are the things we actually shouldn't do anymore. And and this is how we're going to shut that down. And yeah, it helps you form your own life and legacy, and I feel like that's what it's done for me. Like,
Beautiful. Wow.
yeah, all the
Yeah.
thing, like, yeah, I get to
It's
decide
true.
who I
I
want to
feel
be.
absolutely like it's funny how many people, and this isn't a criticism, don't come for me, don't send me letters. It's one of those pieces of people get so caught up when they're doing ancestral work in being hyper focused on the ancestors
Yeah.
instead of themselves as an ancestor in waiting, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. I want the people who come after me to have the best kind of life, and to keep going with, whether it's my own culture or whatever, to keep going with this, in the most positive way that they can, and
Mhm.
for them to live well. And, if I have children, for my kids to live well, and for them to, because everyone's just going to benefit. Like, we're all just going to do great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it really it underlines your company motto, which is Sankofa, return and get it, right?
Yeah.
That am I understanding that right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, yes, because it literally means like return and get it, and then also kind of like it means don't forget where you come from.
Mm,
So yeah, you look at where you came from and all the like. I love my Ashanti culture. I love being Ashanti. It's one of my favorite things. Are there some things about it that are not great? Of course. And I'm like, those things, we gotta not do that anymore. But the really positive things and the things that have made me happy and have enriched my life, I'm like, yeah, I want to pass that down to future people so that they can know, the power and where they come from. And I found, and I'm not the person who said this, somebody else said this, I can't remember who, but learning about your own culture and your own heritage makes you not, people who are, maybe they're racist or whatever, makes you not really so concerned about that, because you
mm,
realize everybody has something great about their own culture. There's no reason for me to hate this person because they're like this and like this. No,
mhm.
I am who I am, and I can love that, and they can love who they are, and that's great too, because we both have things that we can share and learn about and be like, wow, you do that, I do that. So I did a very simplified version of it, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
No, I do, and I think most of my listeners will know what you mean too. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. Yeah. Yeah, that I think that really that ties into my kind of last question around kind of that piece around the deaf doula piece, and then in
Mhm.
working with psychopomps and spirits, right? Because I know from a therapist point of view, and some of the other deaf doulas that I know, they often will work with both their own spirits, but also the spirits of the individual they're working with.
Yeah.
So, and this is inching towards what we're going to talk about, which is the Salem Folklore and Witchcraft Festival. But can I ask you, what is it like for you then to, in that kind of piece around connecting with your own cultural heritage and cultures of your ancestors, how does that then translate into working with clients' backgrounds and their spirits?
Yeah. I think it's always really important, again, as a therapist, you know this, to like learn about the person and where they come from and what their culture kind of demands of them. I'll say that. It always goes to me, my first thought about when I talk about culture and stuff, when I was in nursing school, and we would learn like, okay, if you see somebody of Asian descent come in and they have giant welts on their back that are like the size of a coin, don't call child protective services. Like, and I thought to myself, good point. I never would have thought that. And that's when I started realizing how much like sometimes we don't think about culture. And so then when we talk about spiritual beliefs, especially dying, it matters so much to talk about culture. And number one, first thing is rituals. Rituals mean a lot to people, more than sometimes we realize. And because I'd say I'll use the United States. In the United States, where so many different cultures, sometimes when we're just doing everything like secularly, we just think we'll just do this and it's fine. But no, people's individual rituals mean a lot to them, because in some, like in Ashanti culture, they bury you with stuff for the journey, and if you don't get buried with it, people worry like you will not be okay on the journey, like in certain cultures they bury with a coin in their mouth, they whatever it is, and it affects the whole family if you don't perform these very special rituals. Even last rites, people, I remember where the hospital I used to work with, we had a patient and that patient died without their last rite, and the family was so devastated that that hadn't happened. And it really affects how people are able to heal and move on after the person is gone. So that culturally is really important. And then when you talk to somebody and they talk to you about their culture, what they think is going to happen, it's important to assure them that, yeah, okay, if you're telling me that you're from this culture and this is what you believe, or this is who you believe is coming for you, then I agree with you. That's who's coming for you, And we will wait. And is there any special prayer you want to say for when this spirit comes or when this psychopomp comes? We will say it. It's if you look at it just from an outside perspective as a comforting thing, it makes people feel so safe to be kind of wrapped in these rituals and do these special things at the end of life. Because if that's all they've ever known is that in your culture, this is what's supposed to happen. It's so comforting at the end to be like, okay, this is right. This is going to be good. Like, and to give people that peace of mind is the best thing you can do for them when they're at the end. So I always talk to people about, well, if you have beliefs, is there any special thing that you want done? Do you want a certain kind of religious representative to come to see you? Or is there any special prayer that you need said at your bedside? Tell me, because I want you to feel like you are wrapped in what you know, and you will feel whole and peaceful as it's going on. So yeah.
What have you learned about yourself through that process with those clients? Just a simple question. Just a simple question.
So simple, so simple. Man, I've learned about myself that that's so hard. I feel that I think that one thing that really came to me is that, like, this is part of I don't know, it's part of who I'm supposed to be. Like, that kind of is what comes to me. I was like, this is right for me to like help people and really be, they have this concept of hollow bone in certain cultures, and like that's what I want to be, and that's who the person I want to be. I want to connect people to the other side. I want to connect them to spirit. And I just want to make people feel peaceful. I just want them to have peace, because there's nothing better than having complete and total peace, you know? So me, myself, though, the one thing I have learned is a complete gratefulness for life, you know? Just completely grateful. And every day is just another day to try again, you know? Like maybe today I'll get it right. I don't know. Like but that's how I always think. I'm like, if I woke up, it's another day to try again, and I need to do what I can today to do my do my best. I'm not always going to do my best, but I'm gonna try. And yeah, that.
I really feel you on that. I really feel you on that. That piece about, again, there's always another day. There's always another life. There's always another chance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Absolutely.
that's beautiful. Let's talk about the Salem Folklore Festival, because I didn't realize that you would put your name in until you told me before we recorded. So it's coming up in a few weeks' time. I think it's like 3 weeks' time or something like that. So what are you presenting? Tell us about it.
Yay! Okay, so I'm gonna talk about the mythology of death. So it's gonna be about we're gonna do like kind of a global perspective. So we're gonna talk about different places around the world, their death rituals, and what it means about their culture, how it relates to their culture, and what we can learn from their culture. We'll talk about different death gods and the mythology behind those gods and goddesses. And then we talk about psychopumps, and these are guides to the spirit world, because all these different cultures have really interesting psychopumps, some of them animals, some of them deities and not deities, some of them just random spirits who like that's their only job. Like, so it's yeah, it's very, very interesting. And like I said, like some of these, oh, and we're also going to talk about like the afterlife, what it looks like for these different cultures, and what these people what different mythologies have decided the afterlife looks like.
Oh, that's fascinating. I mean, obviously, I have a big interest in that. A
Yes.
lot of my book is about stuff like that. But it's
Yeah,
fascinating no matter how many cultures we look at, there's always something new. That's the beauty of it.
I know.
For
It's
something that all humans, every single one of us will experience, right?
yes.
Every
Yes.
one of us. That's,
Everybody.
oh,
And to think that they like everybody was like in a certain culture was like, okay, this is what we've decided it looks like.
mhm.
This is what's happening, and this is the person who's gonna take you. It's very interesting.
It is, and it's funny. I was chatting with somebody else about this, Mortellus, who came on a couple of months back in January, when
Hmm.
this eventually comes out. So like 7 weeks ago or something like that. And they've come out with The Bones Fall in Spiral. Their book is entirely about death work and necromancy and whatnot. And they are down in they're down in the middle south there somewhere, North Carolina, one of the Carolinas. And
Hmm.
as a mortician talked about kind of connecting with death gods and connecting with death and connecting with like working with death in that way. And
Yeah.
and it's fascinating again. I would say it's the only thing, except birth maybe, well, birth and death are the only things that
Hmm.
all humans have in common, everybody, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I
It's
love
fascinating. Oh, well, I'm looking forward to listening to your presentation. Of course, the Salem Witchcraft and Folklore Festival 2024 is happening when the dates are March 22nd to Sunday, March 24th. And this is the online version. Of course, later in the year, we're going to have the in-person symposium in Salem there. But for the online, tickets should be available now. And I'm also presenting, which is always fun. I don't know, I can't think which day. I know, I'm really excited. I think I'm presenting on the Sunday. When are you
Okay.
presenting?
I think it's Saturday.
Saturday.
Yeah, it's Saturday. Yeah.
So if it's anything like last year, what they will do is you can purchase tickets for the whole event or for each individual day. You'll have access to all of those the links online. but you can also go and re-listen to them afterwards. So and also purchase. So for people who might be watching this afterwards, go and check out the event. Go and purchase either mine or Ashley's or both of ours after the event, and I'm really looking forward to listening to Ashley there. If people want to get a hold of you, Ashley, though, for this event or for any of your other work, you're based out in New Jersey, but you work with people online too?
Oh yeah, I work
Yeah.
with people online. Wherever you are, I will find you, or you can find me.
That doesn't sound ominous.
I know. Oh gosh.
So the website is the best way, or would you prefer any other way?
Yeah, so anybody can find me. So sankofahealingsanctuary.com is my website. And then I'm on socials. You can always message me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads. And
I haven't tried Threads myself, so I don't
Threads. I
know.
know. But yeah, you can message me on any of those apps or on the website and email me at sankofahealingsanctuary@gmail.com.
Wonderful. And your podcast, Dine with the Divine, you can also find on your website too. When are you still, well, this we're recording in December, but this is coming out in February.
Oh yeah.
Are you going into a new season?
Yeah, I just keep going. Yeah, it comes out every Thursday. Dine with the Divine. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts. We try to do all different types of concepts and cultures and good stuff and tell
Folklore
stories
and
and
fairy
happy stuff.
tales too. I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love that.
exactly.
Yeah. I will also put that down into the show notes as well. Go and have a listen. Of course, listen to my podcast too, but go and have a listen to the Down with the Divine podcast. You've got some amazing guests on over there, and you really blend all sorts of interesting elements too. So I really enjoyed being interviewed by you, and I hope that after this, even though I've been an asshole to you, maybe, I hope that you enjoyed yourself here.
Oh, this has been so fun. I loved it.
It's been you'll have to come back. You'll have to come back when your other
Sure.
project, which you can't talk about, but your other project, when that eventually is coming out. But you
Absolutely.
can't talk about it, so
I can't talk about it.
no.
But yeah.
I know because I'm privileged, but we can't.
Exactly.
Oh, this has been lovely. Ashley, thank you so much. And thank you for going deep with me and explaining and talking about your experience. I think my listeners are really going to appreciate that. And now it's time to kick you out into the cold again. So
No problem. Thank you so much, Ben. And thank you for giving me a free therapy session. It's been great. I feel so good.
this isn't therapy though, because I didn't charge you $120. So
Okay. All right. So the chat. Yeah.
Ashley, thank you again. Everybody else, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, go and find Ashley's stuff down below, just below her name on the YouTube page here, video over here will be her website. And of course, those listening on Spotify and Apple and all of those are in the show notes. I've been Ben Stimson. This has been Ashley Oppon. Thank you so much for joining us, and join us again next Tuesday for another episode. I don't even know who I'll have on yet, but it will be somebody cool. So enjoy. Thank you again, Ashley.
Thank you, Ben.